Thank you so much for watching the Girl Talk podcast on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. We want to say thanks to our friends at Fox Toyota of East Tennessee for their partnership. Oh boy, on today's episode, we're talking about something really hard to do. Saying no. Do you struggle with that too? If you answered yes to that, this podcast is for you. Okay, let's practice together. Are you ready? No! No! Okay, enjoy.
You only have a finite amount of time and energy and resources and focus. You only have a limited amount of that every day. So at the beginning of the day, you have to be real intentional about the things you're going to spend your time and your attention and your focus on. Because if you don't, you're not going to drift toward God. That's for sure. You're going to drift away from him, and you're going to end up doing things that really aren't what you're called to do or what you are gifted to do, and those kinds of things. And so I've been trying to really take a look at my schedule and go, okay, emotionally, this is going to take this much emotional energy. I have this much left. Now, how am I going to spend it? And that's spilling over into my life as a mom.
Oh, yeah.
As a friend.
Oh, yeah.
As a church member, as an employee, all those things. And when you add that up at the end of the day, and I've started to try to think about that when I start my day, like, here's how much I've got, and lay that before the Lord and say, Lord, this is the emotional energy and focus and time and attention that I have today. How would you have me spend that?
Well, and there's so many great ways you can spend that for him. As Christians, we should care about abortion. That doesn't mean that every single one of us need to go and volunteer at our local abortion clinic to stand outside and encourage women not to have an abortion.
Yeah.
We should care about human trafficking.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that all of us should volunteer for an organization. But there are things we should care about. We're all called as with the Great Commission to be evangelists. We're all called to spread the love of Christ and to tell others about him. That doesn't mean all of us are called to go do international missions. So there are things we should care about that we should give some emotional energy to, some prayers to, without actually saying yes to giving our time to.
You just summed my struggle up in like 4 words. You said there's an amount that you can spend for him, and the amount that you can spend for me. It's all his. The amount that I feel worn out and spent, it's because I'm spending it for me. If you look at your emotional labor and how much, say you have $50 emotional dollars that you can spend every day. When I engage in the activities that I know God has called me to do, and the things that I feel gifted to do, when I spend my emotional money in that way, I come out with, I reap benefits from that, and it's more like an investment than it is an expenditure, But when I'm doing it for me, that's when I'm just like get frustrated. Because I'm realizing that I'm serving from a place of lack in my life, and when I'm serving God and He's my sufficiency, He fills me back up.
But this takes intentionality.
Yeah.
And that is the thing that I never really got, was that the drifting piece. I'm not trying to leave none of my emotional dollars or my physical self to my family. It just happens when I don't think about it. And something that helped me was there was this planner that you told me about, Carol.
Yeah.
And it starts out and it says, what are your top 3 for the day?
Yeah.
Something like that. And the days that I stopped and I went, what are my top 3 for the day? Okay, honoring, let's say it was honoring God, and then it was like being meeting the needs of my family, and then it was some self-care. And then I broke down what I was doing that filled those. Am I really doing the things that I'm saying that I'm prioritizing? Am I really prioritizing these things? Because then you list the activities that you're doing to meet those priorities. And it was really eye-opening to me. And I realized, hey, being there to make dinner for my family and being with them is really important. Yeah. And if I'm gone on a tennis match, or if I'm gone running an errand or hanging out with a friend, even though it's a fun thing, I'm not going to be there for that. Now, that's not always the case,
Right.
but it was very helpful to look at my activities and see how do they line up to what I say my priorities are.
Yeah.
And that was helpful to learn what I can say no to.
Yeah. But I will say I can write down things on paper and have every intention, and I still go off the rails.
Sure.
Because what I write down on paper is what I want people to see if they ever found my planner.
Really?
You know what I'm saying?
You told us to burn those.
Yeah. You have specific instructions to burn those. But I think there's just that performance thing in me that I want people to approve of my schedule every day. And I would say, even your best intention, I've been praying this prayer for a little bit, and God does it quite often to interrupt my schedule, because we have become a culture that lets our schedule drive everything in our lives. We're so overscheduled. Our kids are overscheduled. They got too much, and we have become a culture that lets the schedule drive us instead of really what we feel called to do and our really big motivations. Now, there are days that I plan all that out and I'm intent on, and God interrupts me and takes me in a total different direction. At that point, you know what? I throw the planner out the window and say, hey, we'll try again tomorrow.
Yep.
Because he will interrupt you, and you can't plan everything. But I just want us to get to the point, number one, where we feel like we have a choice, and number two, where we're intentional about putting some things in place that are going to fill us back up. I have said this before on the podcast. Nobody had ever asked me the question, what fills you back up? And I remember the first time I was asked that question, I was like, I don't know. Like, I think so many of us don't know what fills us back up. Mm-hmm. And so, you know what fills its place? The scroll. Yeah. That don't fill us back up. That's avoiding something that you need to do. For me, it is anyway. Yeah. That's avoiding.
Saying yes to that is saying no to so many other things.
A Netflix binge, I'm avoiding something. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Like, that's me trying to give my emotional self a pacifier so I don't have to deal with the real issue. So I think that for me, I'm trying to get more intentional, and I don't do it perfectly. I don't do anything perfectly, but I'm trying to get more intentional, because I want, at the end of the day, when my life is over and God says it's time for you to come to heaven, I do not want people to say she did a lot of stuff that meant nothing.
Right.
And I think we would all agree that we, at the end of our lives, we want our lives to have mattered for God. And yet we spend so much time chasing the culture and so little time putting intentions in place to get us to that end goal, that a lot of people are just letting life happen, and we're drifting further and further and further away. I didn't mean to get on a soapbox there.
I think one of the things that I just thought of that is related to what you said is that we've said yes to a lot of things that maybe we should have said no to. And there are other things in our life that we need to say yes to. That it's not just that we need to say no. We need to say yes to some things and no to some of the things that we've already said yes to, that we need to not be involved in anymore, because we're doing things perhaps in our life that don't matter. Mm-hmm. And we're missing out on those opportunities to say yes to things that do matter, because we're doing things that don't matter.
Yeah.
Everything we do is a choice. When you say yes to this, it's probably no to something else. So I remember that book, The Best Yes. So what is the best yes?
So what'd you think? What's been the hardest thing for you to say no to? And what's been your best yes? We would love to hear from you. Let us know in the comments below. And thank you so much for watching.